Hello, my name is Alexandra. I want to tell you about my journey. This is how I started to speak English from day one. Even when I knew only a few words. I was shy, scared, and unsure, but I didn't wait. I spoke anyway, and that changed everything for me. I still remember the way the sky looked that morning. Gray clouds, soft wind, a quiet street, and a new life waiting for me just outside the window. It was my very first day in America. I had just moved from a small town in Europe where life was simple and familiar. In my old town, I walked to the same bakery every morning, greeted the same neighbors, and spoke the same language I had spoken since I was a little girl. But here, everything was different. The roads were wide. The houses were large. The people were strangers. And the words were not mine. They belonged to a language I had studied in school but never truly spoken out loud. That language was English. I stood in my small rented room that morning, looking at myself in the mirror. I wore a blue sweater that my mother had given me before I left home. My hair was tied in a loose ponytail and my heart was beating fast. I was nervous. But I wasn't nervous about where to go or how to take the bus. I was nervous about speaking. I kept repeating a few English phrases to myself in the mirror. Hello? How are you? I want coffee, please. Can you help me? My voice sounded strange to me, as if I was pretending to be someone else. The apartment I had moved into was in a quiet neighborhood. Trees lined the street and birds were chirping softly. I had no friends here yet, and I didn't know anyone nearby. But I knew I couldn't stay inside forever. I needed food. I needed coffee. I needed to take my first step into this new world. So I picked up my bag, put on my jacket, and walked out the door. I saw a small coffee shop across the street. It had a chalkboard outside with the words, "Fresh coffee today," written in big white letters. My heart skipped a beat. This is it, I thought. This is where I would try to speak English for the first time. I paused for a moment at the door. I could hear people talking and laughing inside. The sound of the espresso machine steamed in the background. My hand hesitated as I reached for the door handle. I closed my eyes for a second and whispered to myself, "You can do this." When I walked in, the smell of fresh coffee and baked bread filled the air. A woman behind the counter smiled at me. She had short blonde hair and wore a green apron. She looked friendly, but I was still scared. What if I said something wrong? What if she didn't understand me? I stood in front of her, my hands shaking just a little. I looked at the menu above her head, even though I already knew what I wanted. I just needed a moment to breathe. Then I opened my mouth and said the words I had practiced so many times in my room. "One coffee, please." Just 3 words. Simple words. But when they came out of my mouth, it felt like I had spoken the most powerful sentence in the world. I looked at her, afraid she might frown or ask me something I wouldn't understand. But she just smiled even more and said, "Sure. What kind of coffee would you like?" I blinked. My mind raced. I hadn't prepared for a second sentence. I didn't know how to say more. So I just pointed to a cup on the counter and said, "That one." She nodded and said, "Medium roast." "Good choice." She started pouring the coffee. I felt a little more relaxed now. My first words had worked. I had been understood. The world hadn't ended. In fact, it had just opened. When she handed me the cup, I said, "Thank you." I smiled and she smiled back. That small exchange felt like the biggest achievement of my day. I walked over to a corner table and sat down, holding the warm cup in both hands. I looked around the shop. People were reading books, working on laptops, chatting with friends. They all looked so natural, so free, speaking English without fear. But me? I had just climbed a mountain by ordering a coffee. As I sat there, I thought about how many years I had spent studying English in school. I had memorized grammar rules, taken written tests, even read books. But no one ever taught me how to be brave enough to speak. I realized in that moment that learning English is not just about words. It's about courage. It's about using the little you know, even when you feel like it's not enough. I pulled out my notebook and wrote down everything that happened. I wrote, "Today I said 1 coffee, please." She understood me. I said thank you. I didn't freeze. I didn't run. I spoke. After that, I promised myself something important. I would speak English every day, even if I only knew a few words. I wouldn't wait until I was perfect. I wouldn't wait until I had more vocabulary or better grammar. I would start now, from day one, from this very moment, because if I kept waiting, I might never begin. Later that day, I needed to buy groceries. I had seen a small store just down the road from the coffee shop. It looked quiet, and I thought maybe it would be a good place to try speaking again. My legs were still a little shaky from earlier, but I was also feeling something new, hope. If I could order coffee, maybe I could also buy bread. As I entered the store, I took a deep breath. I didn't know all the words for food, but I knew what I needed. I walked slowly through the aisles, looking at everything carefully. I saw fruits, vegetables, milk, and finally I saw bread. Soft bread, fresh bread. When I reached the counter, an older man with glasses smiled and asked, "Did you find everything you need?" His voice was kind but fast. I understood the question, but I didn't know how to answer it fully. So I nodded and said, "Yes, bread. I want soft one." He chuckled lightly, not to mock me, but because my words came out a little funny. "This one is very soft," he said, handing me the bag. "Good choice." I smiled back. "Thank you. I learn English," I said slowly. He nodded and said, "You're doing great." Those words stayed with me all day. "You're doing great." Maybe I didn't speak perfectly, but I had spoken. Twice in one day. That was more than I had done in years of classroom study. I walked home with the bread in my hand, feeling proud and light. The world was still big. Still new, still scary, but now I knew I could face it. At home, I sat by the window, ate a piece of bread, and sipped the rest of my coffee. I opened my notebook again and wrote down the words I had used. Bread, soft, I want, thank you. I circled them and said them out loud to myself. Then I wrote new sentences using them. I want soft bread. Thank you for the coffee. I learn English. Each sentence felt like planting a tiny seed in a big garden. I also started to talk to myself in English. I said, I am sitting. I am eating bread. I am happy. It felt silly, but it also felt powerful. These were my words. My voice, my effort. That evening, I looked at the small sticky note I had placed on my wall. It read, "Speak from day one." And I had done it. I had spoken. Not perfectly, not fluently, but bravely. And that was more than enough for a beginning. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about the shopkeeper's smile, the barista's kind words, and my own voice saying 1 coffee, please. That one moment had opened a new path for me, a path I was now ready to walk. But the next morning, I wanted more. I didn't just want to speak once a day. I wanted to speak many times a day. I wanted to get better. Not next year, not next month, but now. Right now. And I knew exactly what to do next. The next morning, I opened my eyes with a feeling that was very different from the day before. I wasn't nervous anymore, not the same way at least. I still didn't know all the English words. I still couldn't speak fast. I still had to think before saying anything. But something inside me had changed. I had spoken English yesterday, twice, and nothing bad had happened. The world hadn't laughed at me. No one had shouted at me. I had used simple words and still found a way to connect with people. And now I wanted to do it again. I made myself a cup of tea and stood by the window looking outside. The same street. The same trees. But now it felt like a friend, not a stranger. I decided that today I would go to the library. I had seen a sign for it the day I moved in, just a few blocks away. Libraries were always a safe place for me. Back in my hometown, the library was where I spent many afternoons reading books, doing homework, dreaming about places I hadn't seen. Now, in this new country, I hoped the library would become my place again. A place to learn, to feel calm, to belong. I left the house with my small notebook in my pocket. I had written down a few useful phrases to try. Can I get a library card? Where are the English books? I'm learning English. I practiced these sentences in my head as I walked. When I entered the library, it was quiet, with soft lighting and rows of shelves filled with books. A few people were sitting at tables, reading or typing on laptops. It smelled like paper and wood, a smell that always made me feel at home. I walked to the front desk where a young woman was sitting. She had dark curly hair, glasses, and a kind face. She looked up and smiled. I took a breath and said, "Hello, I want, library card?" She nodded. "Sure. Do you have a photo ID?" I froze for a second. ID? I had never heard that word used like this before. What did she mean? I guessed she was asking for some paper, maybe something official. I said slowly, "I have passport, okay?" She smiled. "Yes, that works." I handed her my passport and she began typing on her computer. She asked me something next, but I didn't understand it. She was speaking fast and I only caught a few words. Mailing. Address go zip code. I panicked a little. I didn't know what to say, but I remembered my new rule. Don't stay silent. So I said, "Sorry, I learn English." Can say slow? She smiled again and repeated the question slowly. Can you tell me your address? For mailing. This time I understood. I gave her the address I had memorized when I moved in. I made a small mistake with the street name. I said Wooden Street instead of Woodland Street, and she corrected me gently. I laughed and said, "Oh, Woodland. I say wrong." She chuckled kindly and said, "That's okay. You're doing great." Those words again. You're doing great. Even with my mistakes, people were patient. They helped me. They listened. She gave me a new library card and a map of the building. I said thank you, and she said, "Enjoy." I walked to the English learning section. There were books for beginners, grammar books, storybooks, picture books, and books with CDs for listening. I picked up a small book called English for Everyday Life. I sat at a quiet table and started reading. The sentences were short. The topics were simple: greetings, shopping, asking for directions. But I still found new words like receipt, aisle, and checkout. I wrote them in my notebook. Then I read them out loud quietly to myself. Where is the checkout? Can I get a receipt? Which aisle is bread in? I made mistakes with the pronunciation. Receipt sounded like recept in my mouth. I said aisle with the S sound at first, but I kept repeating until I got it right. Or almost right. And even when I got it wrong, I didn't feel like stopping. I stayed in the library for 2 hours. I borrowed 3 books and promised myself I would return in a week to get more. On the walk home, I passed by a small fruit shop. I had no plan to stop, but something inside me whispered, "Go in. Try again. Speak." So I stepped inside. There was an old man arranging apples on a shelf. He looked up and nodded at me. I walked up and said, "Hello, how much are these?" He said $1 a pound. I didn't know what pound meant in weight. In my country, we used kilograms. I smiled and said, I don't know pound. Can you show? He picked up a small bag and said, this much is 1 pound. I understood. I said, okay, I take one. He gave it to me and I paid. But as I turned to leave, I realized I had made a grammar mistake. I should have said, I'll take one, or I want one, not I take one. I thought about correcting myself, maybe saying, I'll take one. But I didn't. I just walked out smiling because I had spoken again and again, even with small mistakes. When I got home, I didn't feel embarrassed about the error. I felt proud. I had been brave again, and I had learned something new. That was becoming my daily rhythm. Speak, make mistake, learn, repeat. Later that week, I joined an English meetup group I found online. It was a free group that met every Thursday at a local park. People who were learning English could come and practice with others. I was scared before going, but I remembered what I had promised myself. Don't wait. Speak from day one. Keep speaking. When I arrived, I saw a group of 10 people sitting in a circle talking. The organizer, a woman named Carol, greeted me warmly. Hi, are you here for the English conversation group? I said, yes, I'm Alexandra. I want to talk English. She smiled and said, you came to the right place. We all introduced ourselves. Some people were from China, Brazil, Iran, and even some from my own country. Everyone had different accents. Some spoke better than others. Some, like me, were just starting. But no one laughed at mistakes. Everyone listened. During the group talk, we practiced questions like, what's your favorite food? What do you do every day? Where are you from? I answered slowly. Sometimes I forgot words. Sometimes I said things wrong. Once I said, I like eat pizza instead of I like to eat pizza. Another time I said, I go library every day, forgetting the word to. Carol corrected me gently. You go to the library. I smiled and said, yes, I go to the library. And every time someone corrected me, I repeated the sentence the right way. I didn't get sad. I didn't feel stupid. I felt thankful, because every correction was a gift. It was one step closer to better English. I started writing down my mistakes. I called them golden errors. Not bad errors. Golden ones. Because each mistake had taught me something new. I created a mistake list in my notebook. And next to each mistake, I wrote the right sentence. After a few weeks, I noticed something amazing. The same mistakes were happening less. My mouth was moving more easily. My sentences were becoming smoother. I was still making mistakes, but different ones now. That meant I was growing. One day, at the English group, Carol gave us a challenge. Go to a store or cafe and have a 3-minute conversation with a stranger. My heart jumped. 3 minutes? With someone I didn't know? In English? I almost said no. But then I remembered my first coffee. My first 1 coffee, please. That had been only 3 words. And look where it had led me. Maybe 3 minutes of talking would lead me somewhere even better. So the next morning, I went back to the coffee shop. I saw the same woman behind the counter. This time I said, hi again. I came here before. I'm learning English. She smiled. Yes, I remember you. How's it going? And just like that, we had a conversation. I told her my name, where I was from, that I liked this coffee shop, that I was trying to speak English every day. She listened and asked questions. She corrected me once when I said, I'm living here since 1 month. She said, do you mean you've been living here for 1 month? Yes, I laughed. That's right. And I wrote it down later. Wrong. I'm living here since 1 month. Right, I've been living here for 1 month. Another golden error. When I left, I felt like flying. I had talked for almost 4 minutes, a real conversation, with real mistakes, and real joy. Speaking English had become my daily exercise, like walking or brushing my teeth. Not something to be perfect at, but something to do. Again and again, each mistake was a new word, a new sentence, a new part of me growing. I had learned that speaking was not about being correct all the time. It was about being present, being brave, being open, because the truth is, I made mistakes every day, but I never stopped talking. After my conversation at the coffee shop, I couldn't stop smiling for hours. It was such a small thing, just a chat over a cup of coffee. But for me, it was something big. I had spoken in English for 4 full minutes. And even though I made a few mistakes, I had enjoyed every second of it. That moment gave me a new idea. I didn't need to wait for a classroom or a lesson or a teacher to practice English. I could use everything around me. My daily life could become my classroom. Every place I went, every person I saw, every object I touched, they could all help me practice. I didn't have to wait for a perfect time. I could turn every moment into a learning moment. The next morning, I woke up with a fresh thought. In my head, what if I used everything I do today as practice? Not just reading or writing, but speaking. Out loud, to myself. To others, just speaking. Even if I was alone, I could talk in English. I didn't need someone to hear me. My voice, my words, they would help me get better no matter what. So I started right away. I got out of bed and said out loud, "Good morning. It is a new day. I will speak English today." I brushed my teeth and said, "Now I am brushing my teeth." I opened the fridge and said, "This is milk. I will drink it." I laughed at myself a little because it felt silly at first. But it also felt good. My voice didn't sound as strange anymore. My mouth was moving. I was speaking. I sat down to eat breakfast and kept talking. I am eating toast. This is crunchy. I like it. I picked up a banana and said, "This banana is yellow. It is soft. It is sweet." It was like being a little child again, learning to name things. And that was okay, because I was building something strong. Every simple sentence was helping my mind connect the English words with real life. When I left the house, I kept going. I looked at the sky and said, "It's cloudy today. Maybe it will rain." I walked down the street and said, "There is a dog. It is small. It is barking." Some people looked at me funny because I was talking to myself. But I didn't care. I knew what I was doing. I was training my brain. I was making English feel normal, feel natural. I wasn't waiting for someone to talk to me. I was talking all the time. At the grocery store, I practiced speaking more. I walked down the aisles and read labels out loud. Bread, cheese, apples, orange juice. When I didn't know a word, I stopped and searched for it on my phone. Then I said it 3 times. One time slowly, one time normally, one time a little faster. I wanted the word to live in my mouth. I didn't want it to be just a word in my notebook. I wanted to feel it when I said it. At the checkout counter, the cashier asked, "Did you find everything okay?" I replied, "Yes, thank you. Everything is good." It was a small sentence, but I was proud. Then she said, "Do you want a bag?" I quickly said, "Yes, 1 bag, please." Another win. Another chance to speak. These short moments, they were gold to me. Not big talks, just real life. Real words. When I got home, I put away the groceries and said out loud what I was doing. I am putting the milk in the fridge. I am putting the bread on the table. I am washing the apples. I didn't stop talking. Not for one moment. Even when I cleaned the dishes, I said, "Now I am washing the plate. It is white. I am drying it." It was strange at first, but soon it became a game. A fun game. How many things could I say in English while doing simple things? In the afternoon, I watched a short video in English. It was a cooking video, how to make pasta. I watched it with subtitles first. Then I watched it again without reading the words. I paused the video many times and repeated what the person said. Boil the water, add salt, chop the garlic. I stood in my own kitchen and said the same steps, even though I wasn't cooking. I just said them out loud. Boil the water, add the pasta, stir. Speaking the words while doing something made them stay in my memory longer. My hands were moving and my mouth was working. It helped more than just reading in a book. In the evening, I went for a walk. I saw people jogging, walking dogs, talking to each other. I made small stories in English about them in my head, and sometimes I said them out loud quietly. The man is jogging. He is wearing red shoes. He looks tired. The woman is walking her dog. The dog is big. It is brown. I wasn't just walking. I was building my English, one sentence at a time. At night, I made dinner and continued my practice. I talked about each step. I am cutting the onion. My eyes hurt. I am putting oil in the pan. It is hot. I felt like I was my own English teacher. No one was watching me. No one was correcting me. But I was still learning. My mistakes didn't stop me. I just kept going. I started a habit that night. Before sleeping, I would look at the day and say everything I did in English. It was like telling a story. Today I went to the store. I bought apples and bread. I talked to the cashier. She was kind. I watched a cooking video. I learned new words. This became my bedtime routine. I didn't need a book to study. My life was the book. My days were the pages. In the following days, I added more speaking challenges. I called the bus company just to ask about the schedule. I knew I could check online, but I wanted to talk. The woman on the phone asked, "Which bus are you looking for?" I said, "I want to know the time for bus number 5. She gave me the information, and I thanked her. It was a short call, but I learned how to say bus number, schedule, and time, all from one small phone call. Another day, I called a local bakery and asked, "What time do you close today?" The man said, "We close at 6. I said, "Thank you. I want to come later." I hung up and smiled. I had spoken again. I was using English like a tool, not something to fear, but something to help me live better. Even waiting at the bus stop became practice time. I read signs out loud. Bus 10 to downtown. I described what I saw. There is a woman with a red coat. A child is laughing. The bus is late. I wasn't wasting time. I was training my brain. One evening, I went to the park with my English notebook. I sat on a bench and described the park around me out loud. The sun is setting. The sky is orange. People are walking. Children are playing. I made my voice quiet, but I still spoke. After some time, a woman sitting nearby turned to me and said, "Are you learning English?" I smiled and said, "Yes, every day. I try to speak all the time." She nodded. "That's great. Keep going." It felt like a small encouragement, but those words stayed with me for a long time. The best part about using everyday moments to practice was that it didn't need a lot of time. I didn't have to sit down for hours. I didn't need books or videos. I just had to talk. Talk about what I was doing, what I was seeing, what I was thinking. I was turning my world into my classroom. When I made breakfast, I spoke. When I walked to the store, I spoke. When I saw new words, I said them. When I didn't know a word, I searched for it and said it out loud. Sometimes I even sang in English. Not with a perfect voice, but with joy. Singing helped me hear how words connected. It made my speaking more smooth. I didn't care about being correct. I cared about being free with my words. After a few weeks, I noticed something amazing. English started to feel natural. My mouth moved faster. My sentences were more correct. I didn't have to think so hard. My thoughts came out as words. Speaking became a habit, not a fear. And all of this happened because I stopped waiting for the perfect moment. I stopped waiting for someone else to help me. I helped myself. I made my life the best place to learn. Everyday moments became my classroom. Every sentence became my teacher. And I became a student of my own life. One night, I sat on my bed and looked around my room. Everything was quiet. The light was soft. The day had been full of small English conversations, full of learning. I had spoken to myself all day, at the grocery store, in the kitchen, on the walk home. I had used every moment just like I promised myself. Still, I felt like something was missing. Sometimes I wanted someone to answer me back. I didn't just want to speak. I wanted a voice to speak to me. I wanted to feel like I was in a real conversation, even when I was alone. That night I picked up my phone. I held it in both hands, like it was something new, something powerful. I looked at it and said out loud, "You are going to help me now." My phone had always been a way to connect to people, but now I wanted it to be something more. I opened the voice recorder app. I had never used it before, not even once. I pressed the red button and said, "Hello, this is Alexandra. I'm learning English and I want to practice." I stopped the recording and played it back. When I heard my own voice in English, I almost laughed. It sounded different from what I imagined. My words were clear, but my voice was soft, a little unsure. I didn't judge myself. I didn't feel sad. I felt excited. Now I had a new tool, a speaking partner that would always be with me. My phone. I began recording myself every day. In the morning, I made a short voice message to myself. "Good morning, Alexandra. Today is Monday. You will speak in English today. You will keep going." I played it back while brushing my hair. I listened to myself, encouraging myself. It felt strange, but it also felt powerful. I was becoming my own coach, my own teacher, my own best friend. During the day, I recorded simple thoughts. I am walking to the park. I see a dog. The sky is blue. I feel happy today. I said them slowly, then fast. I tried saying the same sentence in 3 different ways. For example, I like apples. I really like apples. I like apples very much. I played them all back. I could hear how I was improving. Little by little, my sentences sounded smoother. My pauses became shorter. My voice grew stronger. Sometimes I watched short English videos online. I would pause after each sentence and repeat the sentence into my phone. I didn't just say the words. I tried to copy the speaker's voice, their rhythm, their emotion, their tone. If the person in the video sounded excited, I tried to sound excited. If they spoke slowly, I did too. I repeated it many times. Then I played back my own recording and compared it. Was my voice soft enough? Was my tone right? At first, the difference was clear. But slowly, my version started to sound more like the original. I was training my mouth and ears together. One day, I read a short English story aloud and recorded the whole thing. It took 5 minutes. When I listened, I noticed I had said one word wrong. I had said rough as rug. I looked it up and listened to the correct sound. Then I practiced that one word for 5 minutes. Just one word. Rough, rough, rough. I recorded it, listened, said it again, until it sounded just right. I felt proud. That one word was mine now. Sometimes I had fun pretending my phone was a person. I looked at it like it had eyes and a face. I would say, "Hello, how are you today?" Then I would answer myself in a new voice, "I'm fine, thank you." "And you?" I would laugh, but I would keep going. "I'm great." I'm going to the market. My phone was quiet, but in my mind it was talking back. These pretend conversations helped me feel more comfortable. I could speak without fear. I could try new sentences. I could make mistakes and start over. Another thing I loved doing was telling my phone about my day. Before bed, I would hold it close and say, "Today I went to the store. I bought eggs and milk. I talked to the woman at the counter. She was nice. I said, 'Have a good day,' and she smiled." It was like writing in a diary, but with my voice. I kept these recordings. Some were 1 minute. Some were 10. I listened to them again after a week or two. It was amazing to hear the change. My voice was more confident. My English was growing. I also started using voice search. Instead of typing, I would press the microphone button and speak. "What is the weather today in Chicago?" The phone would answer, "Today's weather is sunny, 75 degrees." It felt like magic. I was speaking and the phone was listening. It was a real exchange. If the phone didn't understand me, I tried again. I learned how to pronounce words more clearly. Restaurant, library, temperature. These were hard at first, but the more I said them, the easier they became. Soon I started recording questions. Simple ones at first. "What is your name?" "Where are you from?" Then more personal ones. "What do you like to do?" "What is your dream?" I would answer each question as if someone had asked me. "My name is Alexandra. I'm from Russia. I like reading and walking in the park. My dream is to speak English fluently." I practiced the same answers again and again. I wanted them to come out easily, naturally, like breathing. I even used my phone camera sometimes. I made small video diaries in English. I would sit by the window, press record, and talk. "Hello, this is Alexandra. Today I want to talk about my favorite food." Then I would explain why I liked pizza or soup. I didn't worry about looking perfect. I just wanted to feel normal speaking in front of a camera, because one day I hoped to join a real video call in English. I wanted to be ready. Another trick I used was talking to voice assistants. I said, "Hello, Siri," or "Hi, Google," and asked questions. "Tell me a joke." "What is 5 times 9? Translate "good morning" into Spanish." The phone answered, and I listened carefully. Then I would repeat the answers. This practice helped me build speed. It also made me feel less alone. I wasn't talking into the air. Something was responding. On quiet days when I had no one to talk to, my phone became my best speaking partner. It was always ready, always patient. It never laughed at my mistakes. It never said I was wrong. It just listened. And I learned to listen too. I listened to myself more deeply than ever before. I started hearing the small changes in my voice, the soft rise and fall of English sounds, the music of the language. After some time, I gave myself small speaking challenges with my phone. I would set a timer for 3 minutes and talk about one topic without stopping. Talk about your favorite book. Describe your neighborhood. Explain how to make tea. At first, I paused a lot. I searched for words. I said and many times. But I didn't stop. Even if I didn't know the perfect word, I used simple ones. I said, "It is like a house but small instead of cottage," or "It's a big car for families instead of SUV. These moments taught me how to explain ideas in different ways. This is a real skill, and my phone helped me grow it. One special day, I decided to send a voice message to an English-speaking friend I met online. I had never done it before. My heart was beating fast. I took a deep breath, pressed record, and said, "Hi, Emily. I just wanted to say hello and tell you that I'm practicing my English today. I hope you're having a good day." Then I sent it. I waited nervously. 5 minutes later, she replied with a voice message too. She said, "Hi, Alexandra. That was so good. Keep going. Your English is getting better. I listened to her voice again and again. I smiled so much. That day I learned that one small voice message could build a strong connection. From that day, I started using my phone not only for practice but also for communication. I sent more voice messages. I joined a language exchange app and left short audio replies. I felt nervous sometimes, but the kindness of people gave me courage. They were not judging me. They were cheering for me. The more I used my phone as my speaking partner, the more I realized how lucky I was to live in this time. A phone in my pocket was helping me speak a new language. It didn't replace human connection, but it filled the quiet spaces. It turned silence into practice. It turned fear into action. Some nights I sat on my bed, listened to an old recording from weeks ago and smiled. I could hear how far I had come. My voice was stronger. My sentences were smoother. My heart was braver. And it all began with one small voice note. One day when I decided, I will use what I have. My phone was no longer just a phone. It was my partner, my mirror, my friend, my teacher, my hope. The morning after I recorded my voice note for Emily and heard her kind reply, something changed inside me, not just in my mind but in my heart. I felt light, almost like the world had opened up a little. It was a quiet, simple message from her, yet it carried so much power. Her voice, her encouragement, it made everything feel real. All those hours I had spent speaking to myself, recording into my phone, listening to my own voice, they weren't just private steps anymore. They were becoming part of something bigger. That morning, I sat on the edge of my bed, the phone in my hand, and whispered to myself, from now on, no matter what, I will speak English every single day. I didn't know how I would do it on hard days or busy days, but I made the promise anyway. That promise became my quiet rule. And like every rule I made for myself, I wrote it down. I picked up a notebook, the one I used for new words and sentences, and I turned to the back page. I wrote in big letters, I will speak English every day no matter what. Then I added the date. That page became my new contract with myself. I didn't need anyone else to sign it. Just me, just Alexandra. But it meant everything. At first, it was easy. Speaking English every day was already a habit by now. I had my voice recorder, my daily talks with myself, my video diary, and my pretend conversations. I had small exchanges with people at the grocery store, with the cashier, the bus driver, and sometimes with neighbors. I had even begun to text with a few people from the language exchange app. But I knew that the real challenge wasn't doing it when I felt good. It was doing it when I didn't, and those days came soon. One rainy Tuesday, I woke up with a headache. My body felt heavy and my thoughts were slow. I wanted to stay in bed all day. No talking, no thinking, just quiet. I pulled the blanket over my head. But after a few minutes, my fingers started to search for my phone. I found it on the nightstand. I stared at the screen. I remembered the words I had written in my notebook. Every day, no matter what. I sighed, sat up, and opened the recorder. My voice was rough that morning. I said slowly, "Good morning. I have a headache today. I don't feel well, but I am still speaking English." That was it. Just a few words. But they were mine, honest, simple, real. I had kept my promise. After that day, I created what I called my 1-minute rule. I told myself, if you really don't feel like talking, just speak for 1 minute. Only one, that's enough. This small rule helped me more than I could have imagined. Because most of the time, once I spoke for 1 minute, I kept going for 5, or 10, or even more. Speaking became like opening a door. Once it opened, I stepped through. Some days I didn't want to speak because I was afraid. Not sick, not tired, just afraid. I would see a message from someone in English and hesitate to reply. I'd write the sentence 3 times, then delete it. I'd rehearse the words out loud, then not send the message. On those days, I reminded myself, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be said. So I began recording my replies before sending them. I listened to my message, then decided to send it. Sometimes I didn't listen at all, I just sent it as it was. That felt brave. And being brave, I learned, is a kind of muscle. You build it by using it. One day, I got a message from a girl named Lily. She lived in Chicago and was also learning Russian. She said, maybe we can help each other? I liked that idea. So we started sending voice messages back and forth. A few seconds each, just simple things. How was your day? What did you eat? What are you reading? Sometimes she spoke in Russian and I replied in English. It was a beautiful dance of languages, and it gave me another reason to speak every day. Even when we were busy, we found time. I remember one day I was walking to the bus stop, and I only had 5 minutes. I saw her message and replied right away. Hey Lily, it's raining here today. I forgot my umbrella, so I'm getting a little wet. But it's okay. I like the sound of the rain. I pressed send and laughed to myself. Speaking in English didn't feel like a task anymore. It felt like living. It was part of my day, like brushing my teeth or eating lunch. But the real test came during the winter. December was cold and dark. The sun disappeared early, and the days felt long and quiet. My energy dropped. Some evenings, I sat by the window with a blanket, watching snow fall slowly outside. I missed home. I missed the feeling of my first language. I wanted comfort. I wanted ease. But then I would hear a small voice in my heart. The same voice from the back. Page of my notebook, no matter what. So I made new ways to keep going. I started reading short poems in English and repeating them out loud. I picked one poem and read it every night for a week. I recorded myself and listened again the next morning. I started memorizing parts. I loved how the words felt in my mouth. I wandered lonely as a cloud, I would say, or hope is the thing with feathers. These were just lines from books, but when I spoke them, they felt like my own. I also made an English corner in my room. It was just a small chair, a lamp, and a table with my English books and notebook. But that corner became a place of promise. Every day I sat there, even if just for 5 minutes, and I spoke. I would say, hello again, English. I'm here. And then I would talk about my day, about the weather, about anything. That corner was like a little stage. No one watched, but I performed anyway. Even when I traveled or visited friends, I found time. I remember going on a short trip with my cousin. We stayed in a small hotel. At night, after everyone went to sleep, I went into the bathroom, closed the door, and whispered into my phone. Today I saw a mountain. It was so big. The snow was beautiful. I want to climb it one day. My voice was quiet, but my promise was loud. Speak English every day, no matter what. One day I forgot. I was out all day helping my aunt. Then I had dinner with family. By the time I got home, it was almost midnight. I changed into my pajamas and lay down. Then suddenly I sat up straight. I looked at the clock, 11:56 p.m. My heart raced. I grabbed my phone, opened the recorder, and said, "Hi, this is Alexandra. It's almost midnight, but I'm still speaking English today." I laughed after I said it. That night I fell asleep smiling. After many months, something beautiful happened. One morning I woke up, walked to the kitchen, and started talking to myself without thinking. I need to buy more milk. Maybe I'll go in the afternoon. I wonder if the bakery has fresh bread today. Then I stopped and realized I was speaking in English. Not as a task. Not because of the rule. It was natural, automatic, like breathing. That moment made me cry. Not because I was sad, but because I was proud. This had been my dream, to think and speak in English like it was a normal part of me. And it happened. Not all at once, not magically, but day by day, word by word, choice by choice. Every time I didn't feel like speaking and I still spoke, every time I felt nervous and still pressed send, every time I was tired and still whispered into my phone, those small acts became my bridge. I didn't walk across that bridge in one big step. I took thousands of little ones, but I kept walking, and my voice walked with me. Speaking English every day wasn't just about learning a language. It was about learning myself, my strength, my courage, my heart. And I learned that if you want to change something in your life, like speaking a new language, you don't have to wait for the perfect moment. You just have to begin, and then don't stop. Not even on rainy days. Not even when you're tired. Not even when it's midnight. Keep speaking, one word at a time, because when you speak, even if it's only to yourself, even if no one hears you, you are building something strong, something beautiful. And for me, that something was my English voice. And I speak it every day, no matter what.